Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. I know you can't see it, but I have a cat in my lap right now. She has been in my lap for the past like 20 minutes and it is extremely distracting. But I will let you see her just for a minute. We've got Bobo. Of course it's Bobo, my sweet little baby. She's a little angel, but she makes it very difficult to like actually get work done because she's so cute. And when she's being a lap baby, all you want to do is pet her and love her. Bobo is basically like me as a cat. If I was a cat, I would be Bobo. She is that curious and she's smart. She actually is smart. She is the only cat that we have that was able to figure out this like puzzle game that we got them. You put like a little cat treat in it and then the cats have to solve kind of like the puzzle to get the treat. Bobo was the only one who was able to do it and was interested enough to actually try to try. So anyways, sorry about that tangent, excuse me, but Bobo is the queen, okay? I know you guys are here really for her and you just put up with me. So, I saw this article. This came out actually last month, and I've been meaning to cover it, but sometimes other things come up, as you guys know, and that kind of takes precedent over something like this. But I did eventually want to get to covering this because I found this very interesting. This is an article that was put up by the Huffington Post, and it is a woman who paid a matchmaker $4,000 for her to go on 4 dates. So basically, the breakdown there is she's spending about $1,000 per date. And that's not including the cost of the date. I don't know if these men paid for it, but I found that very interesting because typically stories like this that you hear about, it's men who are paying matchmakers to introduce them to women rather than the other way around. And I found this to be very interesting. So this is the woman who paid the matchmaker, and this is, I think, the photo that she used for these dates. Yeah, the professional photo that was part of the money that she spent with the matchmaker. This was included in it. So her story is very interesting. It's a good thing to highlight, I think. I find it fascinating. So she says, when I was just out of college, I made a list of 17 characteristics my future boyfriend would need to possess to be worthy of my love. Now, right off the bat, there's a few things wrong with this, right? First of all, this is not a teenager. Like, when you think of somebody making a list of like characteristics their boyfriend should have, like you'd be thinking this is a high school girl, like a teenage girl, because that's kind of how they think, not an adult who is freshly out of college. And people should not have to have certain traits or do certain things to be worthy of your love. Your love should be given regardless of what you're getting in return. You should just love people because you love them for who they are. It should not be conditional upon them meeting your set of criteria, if that makes sense. So she's looking at love and relationships all wrong, like from the outset. She says, my list was written in blue felt tip pen on the back of an envelope I took from the desk at my temp job as a receptionist, a job I would later quit when my boss wouldn't let me leave early to meet my friends at a bar on New Year's Eve. So once again, we kind of have another red flag for this woman, that she quits a job because she couldn't leave to go party with her friends on New Year's. As an adult, this is not like acceptable behavior. I understand she's like, maybe this was right out of college, but even still, that is like childish behavior. The concept that maybe I had some work to do on myself never entered my mind. That That right there is a perfect example of a lot of the arrogance that you see with modern women. And I love women. This is not to critique um, every woman, of course, like, hello, I am one, but I like to be honest and real about how women are, if you know what I mean. And there are some segments of women, not all, I'm not saying that, who are incredibly entitled, incredibly arrogant. And yes, the thought to would never occur to them that maybe like they are the problem, or that maybe they need to do some self-reflection and some work on themselves. So this is part of her requirements for her quote perfect man list. And another red flag is that you would even have a list called perfect man list. Nobody is perfect. We're all humans. We're all flawed and fallen beings. So it's from the outset, it's highly unrealistic. So these requirements are that he has to be taller than her. And she has an example here. She says, see movies. So she is allowing movies to dictate her criteria to her. And these movies are like rom-coms that are completely fake. Like, that's not how relationships unfold naturally. It's a fictionalized film, and things are sped up to for the film, and they always like to give it a happy ending and wrap it up. So you should understand that that is not what you should be using to gauge like your own life. In these movies too, in these rom-coms, they never go into like the gritty details of like what people actually do, how much they have to work to survive, to pay bills. They just live in these nice homes. They have nice furniture. You hardly see them working at all. They have all this time to go on these dates, and it's just silly. It's not real. It's a romanticized version of courtship, if you will. So the criteria continues: wear Levi's, and she puts duh in parentheses. It's so bizarre. Why would the perfect man have to? So he has to be tall. He has to wear Levi's. He has to like and ride horses so that they can share passions. He has to read poetry. Then she puts sensitive types only in parentheses, writes poetry, and then says may as well require some talent in parentheses. And again, like, first of all, what do you mean by that? Like, there are plenty of men who are talented at fixing things, right? Why does he have to be talented at writing poetry? And let's be honest too, that what's funny to me about this is that it's so juvenile and it's so silly, because she's saying that this is what she wants and that this would be a perfect man, but knowing how women are, if you meet a man who's writing poetry and reading poetry and is like, she's not going to be attracted to the sensitive type, as she's saying here. She's basing this again off of romanticized and fictionalized versions of relationships, not based on how they actually are. A man like that would be, in the real world, a total turnoff to her if she actually met him. Okay, so just keep that in mind. She says that she wants these things, but she doesn't actually want them. And it's very similar to how these women say that they want men to open up to them and be vulnerable and like cry, and then that ends up triggering like a visceral disgust response when she sees a man blubbering, because it signals to her weakness. So she says she wants it, and then if he does that, it's going to cause her to lose attraction. And men instinctively know this, right? I just find this funny that this is her list. And there's nothing on this list that is actually practical of like what you would want in a long-term partner, somebody to be a father to your children. Like, she doesn't include anything in here like those kinds of values. There's nothing really about values at all for the man. She's not looking at a man who's passionate about his own interests. She wants him to share her passions, which is riding horses, I guess. Like, we can all just afford to ride horses. It's ridiculous. So she continues, not long after the creation of said list, I met Jonathan Marks in an accounting class at the University of Chicago, where I attended business school after college. There he was, tall, gorgeous, Levi wearing, horse riding, Princeton educated, poetry writing Jonathan Marks. The man from the back of the envelope was real, and the dream come true of him warranted always using both his first and last names. So this sounds exactly like the kind of guy you're thinking, a Chad, as they like to call them, right? For solid 2 months, I thought we were dating. I bet you did, didn't you? You poor thing. He called me. He picked me up on his motorcycle and took me to see a streetcar named Desire. Is he 50? Like, really, Tennessee Williams? Come on. Like, that's so funny. It's just kind of hilarious to me. I don't get me wrong, I loved a streetcar named Desire, but I think it's funny that, like, if a man took me to see that on a motorcycle, I would be a little concerned. Jonathan Marks told me about his family, showed me photo albums from his childhood, and introduced me to his brother. But aside from the occasional brushing of hands and lingering hugs goodbye, there wasn't anything physical between us. I, what does that tell you? I thought he liked me so much that he didn't want to risk doing anything too soon. Yes, because that sounds like a man that is attracted to you. But then Jonathan Marks hooked up with my friend Lisa, and after that, he started dating another pal named Kelly. Shocking. Princeton. Princeton dude, wow, what a surprise. My list of requirements for my perfect mate did not include sleeping with my friends. I'm sure I kept some of my boyfriend requirements in my head as I stumbled through the singledom of my remaining 20s and 30s. Guys, this is a problem. This woman wasted her 20s and 30s following a list of criteria based on basically nonsense. And now she is in her 40s and she regrets that. And let's just be real, women have a very short window of fertility. So it is different for them. They should have different focus and priorities when getting into a relationship when they're young than like a man does, because he doesn't have the same limited window of fertility. So I don't know why, but this is like college has indoctrinated these women into thinking they need to be careerists when they're young instead of doing that after they've gotten married and have kids. And when they're older, then they should be pursuing a career. But she spent her young years right out of college, you know, pursuing this, I guess, dating game with her criteria and her nonsense. These years were jam packed with many wine fueled first date debriefs and relationship dissections. He bought me a toothbrush. That means this is serious, right? But ultimately lacked any real romantic achievement. And again, that would be because she was not looking for the right things, which would have been a man that has values, integrity, has things he's passionate about, wants to be a husband and father, etc. By the time I hired a matchmaker in San Francisco at age 43, I knew enough not to trust my own instincts when it came to finding love. Finally, in her 40s, she's realized that she cannot trust her own judgment, or that maybe like it didn't occur to her to do something different, to try something different. And I find that to be wild, but not really surprising. I had learned that some people had expertise in certain areas, and if you wanted to fix something you didn't know how to fix yourself, you had to hire a professional. Need to get fit? Hire a personal trainer. Need to get your head right? Go to a therapist. So I disagree with this. I don't think that you need to hire an expert. If I want to get into shape, I just go to the gym. I go to the gym every single day. I get up at 5:30. Occasionally I take like a day or two off if I feel like it, but you don't have to hire a trainer. You don't have to have, you don't have to pay for these apps that give you meal plans. You can literally just do the research yourself and figure it out. You also don't need to go to a therapist. You literally just have to go to liturgy. Just go to church. I did my research and I found Rachel, a consultant who worked at an exclusive matchmaking service that promised to help clients meet people they actually wanted to meet. It sounded a little too good to be true. But the testimonials and photos of happily married couples helped me get over the $4,000 price tag, a shocking cost, but I was making big tech money and thought I was ready for a relationship. So it's let's just be real. She lives in California, okay? She's like a San Francisco big tech employee. Like she's working in tech in California, and she was fooled by website testimonials and pictures that don't really mean anything. That I actually think that that's kind of cute. Rachel was adorable. I liked her, even though I had questions about her compensation. She was making $4,000 for setting up 4 dates with no guarantee of anything more. But she assured me that the cost was going to be worth it for the time she spent really getting to know me and what I was looking for, not to mention the professional photo shoot to make sure I look desirable to her roster of potential men. What stands out most when I look back at my meeting with Rachel was her reaction when we talked about what I was hoping to find in a partner. So I feel like I have a good sense of who you are, but why don't you tell me a little bit about the man you think might be a good match for you? The matchmaker asks her. I tried to be specific without mentioning the horses or poetry, even though 2 decades later, I was still fantasizing about finding a man with those attributes. It is amazing to me that in her 40s, she still has this bizarre fantasy of a poetry reading, horse riding Mr. Darcy. Like, this is not Pride and Prejudice, my goodness. I told her what mattered most. He needs to be super bright and successful. Somebody who has made it professionally, somebody who owns a home, and a ski house wouldn't hurt. A 43 a 43-year-old perpetually single woman expecting at her age to get a super hot, super smart, super successful man who owns his own home and might even have a ski house. Those guys are dating 20-year-olds, ma'am. I'm sorry, I hate to break this to you, but like, that's not how this works in the real world. This is not a Hallmark movie. This is not a Lifetime movie. And it is funny to me because it is so much like my mother. It reminds me exactly of my mother, who is in her 60s now. She used to be very beautiful when she was in her 20s and 30s. She had a roster of men she dated. Pretty much every childhood doctor and dentist I had, she was dating at one point. She had a boyfriend like pretty much everywhere, on the police force, at law firms. She's dated judge, like she that was my mother, and her criteria was that she wanted to date somebody that was a millionaire. He has to be a doctor or a lawyer, but every time she would date those guys, it would always end in disaster because she was shallow and superficial, and so are they. Typically, they're both narcissists, and that's in that position. But she's in her 60s now, and her criteria as a 60-year-old woman who no longer has her pretty privilege is she wants to be with a man who makes 7 figures, not 6. Oh no, it has to be 7. He has to be younger than her by like 20 years. So she wants to date like a 45-year-old. He has to be successful and she has to be able to give her a lifestyle, but she also doesn't want to have to live in the house with him or like sleep in the same room as him. Like, I don't know what she's thinking, but my sister has told her like This is not how the real world works. Those men are dating women in their 20s. They're not interested in a 60-year-old alcoholic narcissist. Like, sorry. So I find this funny that this woman in this article, she's paid this matchmaker, she is spending money, she's making an investment, but she still has that teenage mindset of like, oh, he has to have, he has to be smart, wealthy, own a home, own a ski house. It's ridiculous. It's so delusional. I don't even know what to say. Rachel smiled and nodded, encouraging me to continue while I wondered if she had a boyfriend, of course. Okay, so yes, he needs to be successful, but he can't only think about work. I mean, I'd like him to have hobbies and enjoy sports or activities other than making money, and some interest in the arts, movies, books, a little culture. Oh, and it would be nice if he came from a good family that he's still close with and sees on a regular basis. Wow. So again, this is insane. He has to be incredibly wealthy and successful and own a home and have a ski house, but he can't work too much. He also has to be interested in sports and culture and movies and all the things I like. And he has to have a good family. And he has to still be in contact with him. What is she thinking? I find this crazy that she didn't think that these words came out of her mouth and she didn't self reflect like at all when she said that. Rachel looked at me and waited an intentionally long time before speaking. Sarah, do you know who you just described? I sat there staring at her in silence. After an uncomfortably long time, she cleared her throat. You just described yourself. So she's basically in love with herself. This is a narcissist. And what she's looking for is someone that will mirror back her narcissistic qualities to herself. I mean, I find that kind of funny. And look, I don't know if she is for sure. I'm not gonna diagnose anybody, of course, but that's how this comes off. Like, it's exactly how it comes off. I heard what she said, but didn't quite get it. Her observation didn't sink in and wouldn't sink in until years later. This woman has such an inability to actually self reflect. It took her years to understand something as simple as that statement of, oh, yeah, you are talking about yourself. These are all of your qualities. This is not like, uh, not realistic in what you're searching for. So she continues, I hadn't yet learned that trying to date someone exactly like yourself or finding love from a specific set of criteria probably wasn't a good idea, and that the checklist and matchmakers and thinking I could problem solve my way into love were never going to work. It is insane that it took her that long to figure that out. So she has here sweet, handsome, funny, taller than me, smells good, successful, likes and rides horses, likes and writes and reads poetry, writes poetry, nice, something his mom, nice to his mom, not a vegetarian. Well, at least you got one thing right. Wanting to go to Paris, looking good in Levi's. Wow. I just like that is wild. The 4 dates I went on were awkward and awful. Gee, who could have guessed? When you're paying thousands of dollars rather than just thinking, well, that doesn't feel like a match, you and the matchmaker want reasons. But there just wasn't any attraction between me and any of the 4 men Rachel had selected for me. The whole thing made me feel worse about myself than being single did. Well, okay, but why wasn't there attraction? Like, what is she? Is that because these people didn't live up to her bizarre standards with that meeting all of these criteria that she arbitrarily decided she thinks she wanted? And again, even if that person was presented to her, she wouldn't like him anyways, because the person she described as the person she was dating who went and slept with her friends. She may not have included that on the list, but all of the other characteristics are kind of like what you would expect. I paid a ton of money to learn you can't force attraction through a set of criteria. Well, I'm glad that you finally figured that out. Like, how did it take $4,000 and four dates for her to figure that out? Is that not something that normal people like figure out in their like 20s? You know, I understand being a teenager, but when you become an adult, like what what is this thinking? Why would you think that you could force attraction through this arbitrary criteria, and then as you grow up and get older, your criteria doesn't change. It stays exactly as it was when you were in your 20s. That is telling me that, like, you haven't grown up at all. You haven't really changed in all of that time. I wanted what I thought love was going to do for me. That's another thing. She wasn't really interested in getting to know somebody and getting to establish a friendship first, then a relationship. She was looking to check off a box, and she wanted somebody that I think that she could show off and like brag about. I was trying to fix myself by outsourcing what I needed to do on my own to somebody else. Not the matchmaker, but the man. Yeah, exactly. From the time I was a little girl and got my first gold star on a handwriting assignment, I believe self-worth was something you had to earn. That little girl turned into a gold star chasing woman who looked like she had it all but was filled to the brim with secret self-loathing. I spent my entire adult life hoping the right person, some carefully selected other, would make me feel better about myself. Guess what? It doesn't work that way. I couldn't comprehend that I had to find a way to feel good about myself on my own, for being rather than doing. I was downright exhausted by the time I reached 40. Yeah, it sounds like it. The only thing that helped me fix what really needed fixing was therapy. I wanted to be out of pain, and for me, the solution was doing the emotional hard work to understand why I felt so bad about myself in the first place. This is all things she could have done without paying a therapist. Again, outsourcing, and she should have done it on her own. My therapist, David, was patient, didn't push too hard when I got stuck, and let me come to realizations on my own so I could begin to understand the patterns I'd created. Only with that understanding did the slow, subtle shift into believing I was really, truly worthy of love start to occur. Well, did she think that these men were worthy of love that she dismissed because they didn't meet her criteria? Therapy may not be the thing that works for everyone, but it helped me in profound ways I'm still trying to process. Here's the biggest life lesson that took me so many years and dollars to learn. Until you fix how you feel about yourself, you're not ready for a real, loving relationship. Only after I fixed my relationship with myself was I finally ready for the big capital L love I'd hoped for all these years. Today, my requirement for a man is one single bullet in the form of a question. Do I feel like the best version of myself when I am with him? Much better than what she started with. And my answer continues to be yes, 7 years after I started dating a man who showed up in my life when I least expected him, and only after I realized the most important thing on the dating list is me. Even as I continue to do the work of therapy, I can tell you that this love is better and more complicated and more fulfilling than anything I'd imagined. And yes, my imperfect man is right here sitting next to imperfect me, acting as if my typing isn't annoying. He doesn't write poetry, but he looks amazing in Levi's. So it took her that long to like figure out things that most people figure out like earlier in life. But this is not like to it's not to put her down. I understand that sometimes it's hard to change like how you think about things and to work on yourself. Of course, if it was easy, everybody would do it. But it's not. I just like the fact that it took that long. Well, that's wild. But at least towards the end, she's like, it sounds like she's gotten a lot more realistic about what to expect. But I think that the problem that a lot of these younger women have is this entitlement in the same kinds of patterns of thinking. And this is their future. You can just project them into the future that they're going to end up 43 years old, still single, with no kids, no husband, and then suddenly having this realization that maybe I've been going about this all wrong for literally half of my life, and now my best years are gone, right? And it's something that younger women, I think, need to hear, and they need to be humbled a little bit more and not have these absurd expectations and lists of things that they're expecting and wanting. And for people who think I'm picking on the women, for my ladies in the audience, I made a video like this for men too. It was called like the I forget what it's called, but it was like the trad dream and the waifu meme. Okay, I'll link it in the video description. I've gone over the same thing about unrealistic expectations with them as well. So I'm not picking on women, but this is like being real. As a woman, I can say that yes, this is like a problem that a lot of women have. So I thought that was interesting. But I'm interested to know your thoughts. What do you guys think about that story? And I hope you all have a good day.